Hello and welcome to this week's review of Mashle Magic and Muscle, Chapter 74 titled Mash Burn Dead and the Challenge to End All Challenges. Which of course in the context of this story is a written exam, because for all Mash's physical abilities and the ability to think on his feet when placed under extreme conditions, he isn't the most well-rounded and book-smart individual. Not that it can really be helped given the fact that he was both raised away from civilization without any sort of formal education and had almost no interaction with other people outside of his adoptive father until the last few months, but unfortunately the society he is living in nor the divine visionaries are going to let him give that as an excuse, especially when at least one of its members is still looking to put Mash's head on a pike. So, the chapter begins with Lemon listing off the result of some preliminary tests his friends had Mash perform to get a better idea of what they are dealing with. And to say it's bad would be an understatement. Not a single one of them seems to have a passing grade, and Mash begins to visibly shake as he does any time he is stressed over something. Lance quite clearly sums up Mash's position as him having barely scraped by as he aced all the physical exams. But now he has to do a written test to pass the year, so he is in a real pinch. And here for perhaps one of the first times we see Mash genuinely stumped by something, even complaining that he wants to go home, which of course isn't something he can do and he knows it. But Dot is happy to provide his assistance and volunteers everyone to help, with Lance giving him a side eye as if questioning his enthusiasm for giving over the time of someone else. Mash asks Dot somewhat deadpanned if he is actually any good at studying, and in response, he gets a completely serious response from Dot that he is in fact good at studying, which only serves to further unnerve Mash as he begins shaking even more violently. I guess he assumed that like himself Dot wasn't the most book-smart of individuals, and he does in fact give off that imagine. That being said, he also isn't hyper-intelligent, just someone with a good work ethic. Dot is a lot more mature, at least when it comes to looking to the future, than I initially gave him credit for. Realizing he is the only one who seems to be struggling with even passing the exam, he seems to fall into a slump. Of course, his friends are going to support him as best they can. That being said, Mash's own dedication to the idea is lacking as he asks for their help through gritted teeth. He really hates sitting at a desk and learning things from a book or from a lecturer. He starts off trying to listening to what Lance has to teach him about the basic points which would be required to pass the test, but as they move on he slowly degrades until his head explodes from the pressure, and as comedic as that is, I could see that coming into use later, especially when all it does is give him an afro, although it does leave him basically a jabbering idiot for a moment before he returns to his senses and with 1,000-yard stare says he'll never be able to pass the test. Of course, Dot isn't having any of that and tells him outright that it's not about if he can or can't pass it, he needs to pass it because if he doesn't, he will be expelled. So, with a somber look he goes back to studying, the clock ticking in the background as time passes them by, and Mash looks over to see all his friends staring at him with shadowed out visages, well except for Finn, who is quite possible the only one here who isn't trying to shove knowledge down Mash's throat. Of course, when push comes to shove and when he can't fight, Mash takes the other option and flees, leaping out the window and shattering it into pieces. His friends are alarmed by that, obviously, well except for Lance, who quickly cuts to the chase, telling them that if Mash doesn't want to learn he won't waste his time trying to teach someone who isn't going to put in the effort, if he wants to run at the first sign of difficulty that is on him. I get where Lance is coming from, as he has to dedicate himself completely to his goal for his own goals, which involve making sure his sister is taken care of, so seeing Mash running away despite what is at risk would certainly not shine Mash in a good light even if they are friends. However, among all of them, there is one of them who probably emphasizes with Mash the best, Finn, who is honestly quite the loser, at least with respect to the rest of the group. Well except for Lemon, we don't really know too much about her or how she is faring academically, but regardless, having been with Mash the longest, and so of course he is the one who goes to find him, leaving his other friends behind. I am a bit surprised that neither Lemon nor Dot decided to go with him. I guess it just goes to show when it comes down to it, Finn values Mash's friendship more than he does his own success, which isn't too much of a surprise given he hasn't stated to have any true goal as of right now. Finn eventually finds Mash, buried up to his neck in the ground, which gives us a signature comical freakout from Finn as he looks upon him. And Mash gives us a surprisingly dark moment of comedy, saying he is letting the earth reclaim him. Well, when I opened up this chapter, I wasn't expecting a suicide joke. Mash really hates studying. And as he is apologizing to Finn, telling him it's too hard to study, Finn instead speaks up to counter his argument, telling him that the Mash he knows wouldn't hesitate to take on even the most impossible of enemies, and he want to graduate with that Mash, so he needs to get up and try again. Finn's development over the series has been a real underrated treat. There is no way the Finn at the beginning of the series would have been able to stand up and talk to Mash like that even if they were friends. And like the good shonen protagonist he is, Mash recovers his drive to try again and pulls himself free from the hole he had dug himself into. Acknowledging that it wasn't like him and how no matter how hard it might be he has to do his best. And as he pulls himself free, he is absolutely covered in cute little moles. So after that they head back to the others, with Mash apologizing for running off and asks for their help again. Dot tries to act cool and says something about not being certain if they should, but he is cut off by Lance and Lemon both agreeing to help him out anyway. And so they get back to studying, with Dot comedically trying to apologize for what he just said while they all get on with studying for the exams, with us getting a small montage of Mash studying with each of his friends, and on his own while weightlifting. It's actually quite cute and reminds us that despite all the strength and power Mash possesses he is still just a kid who needs to learn about the world, and it also highlights that yes, for all the magic in this world, school life really isn't so different after all. And come the day of the exam, well, Mash panics as expected, sweating buckets, and shaking quite violently as he tries to do his best on the test, and once the test is over, trying to ask Mash about it only leaves him shaking, but we don't get any more of that as we quickly skip forwards to the day of the results. And apparently this is their graduation. I am assuming this is them moving on to the second year of the academy and not their actual final graduation. Is that a thing in Japan where moving from one year to the next is called graduation? But regardless, the teacher, a woman who gives me Major Minerva vibes from Harry Potter, telling Mash that he has been nothing but a rebel against the school's education system, and of course his grades have been awful, and she wouldn't expect him to be here much longer. Although she is impressed to see he can put in the effort when needed, although she does immediately go back on her word telling him his grade was nothing to be proud of, however, as he barely managed to scrape by. It's nice to see that even after Mash's secret got out, that at least one of the school's teachers isn't an ass and doesn't go out of their way to make Mash's life a living hell. And as Mash is relieved to have it over and done with, saying how it wasn't so bad, his friends all surround him and Lance and Dot start kicking the crap out of him. Mash then recalls how he actually managed to pass the test, using the memories of his friends and remembering what they taught him, and comedically the quill he is using tells him if he speaks again it will fail him. But even so, as the narrator finishes up the chapter, it tells us that Mash was reminded of the fact it is only through the help of others that we are able to progress overall. It was a rather sweet slice of life chapter, showing us more of Mash's school life and also showing us that his friends aren't the only ones who are benefiting from having Mash around, but in fact they are all working together towards their own goals. And in the future, I can see Mash and his friends really being those who shake up the world, and I am very much looking forward to it. It also shows us yet again that Mash isn't a perfect guy. He has weaknesses, and he has struggles just like everyone else, and he can also become disillusioned with how things are going. I have been the Anonymous Weeb, and I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please leave a like, and if you have your own thoughts then leave a comment. If you want to see more of my videos, don't forget to subscribe and ring the bell. Other than that, please have a brilliant day wherever you are, and like Mash, let's do our best.